Okay, this is a little abrupt slap together. I am fresh off of U.S. Nationals, just got back home, and literally an hour off of wrapping up the U.S. Nationals recap, and we did like freaking 5 shows live there. You are already on the scene at Euros. You're commentating. Matt Gary is at Euros, and we're kind of a little all over the place. So, but we got something is better than nothing. I'm like, my God, we got to throw something together here for Euros. I've been following, but it's not the prep work I would like. Obviously, you being a commentator, um, I'm hoping you've I don't know all the different sessions you're doing, but I'm perusing, and I could see some battles afoot. There's some battles afoot in the Battle of Europe. Let's talk about the women's side first, I think. And what are some of the intriguing battles for you? Because we have some close ones.
Yeah, for sure. So, like you said, I landed in Malta not so long ago. The championship starts tomorrow, and we're off with a bang. But the fights that we really see amongst the women, I'll kind of name all of the ones that I see immediately, that I think are going to be exciting, and then we can dive a little bit deeper into them. We see the 57s, the 69s, and the 76s, I think, being the three closest battles we're going to have in the women's side across the week. And that's not to say we're not going to see some phenomenal lifting and individual lifting in other weight classes, but those three seem to have the tightest battles within them. And amongst those three, the 69s is going to be the Eurosport primetime session as well.
Is it? Okay, good. Good that they got a good battle in there for them. Um, is it well speaking of so looking at the 57s, Penna he's supposed to join us. I know he did get sick, and he's like if he's feeling better, he's gonna be hopping on. And obviously Pal is Penna from France is Penna's athlete. So as soon as Eric Helms is joining us right now, let me let him in here. But as soon as Penna is on the podcast, if and when he makes it, he'll have some insights in the 57s. But we can move to the 69s. And in the 69 kilo category, Mart Schenner, long-time world's top end at the world championship. I mean, I remember back to like 2022. So we're going almost half a decade. She's been in the mix. Showed up worlds, Euros as well. But Bouchot from France, only 5 kilos behind her. Bouchot, junior star, now in the Open, campaigning at the European Championship. And not far behind her as well is Netherlands. And you were saying Bright Jordan from Ireland. And despite the fact that the nominations, I mean, nominations are close enough, you think it might even be closer than that, Amelia.
Yeah, I 100% think the 69s is much closer than people anticipate, especially if everybody's on for a good day and putting that pressure on Marta. The thing is, if anyone who's listening has been watching these girls training, that Jordan Bright and Marie Jose have both been having phenomenal preps leading into this. So the spread currently is 552.5, 547.5, 541, and 539.5. But I do think that Marie and Jordan really are going to be pushing into the upper 540s, 550s, and really putting the pressure on Marta, who I imagine has got her eyes on Andorina. And we see it a lot of the time where we see the kind of the psychology of lifters either go one way or another. They go, right, it's me and this person in second going head to head for the gold. And that's when we see those third and fourth positions, slip into the cracks of maybe some mistakes, maybe some pressure of two lifters pushing each other. And then you have lifters who I suppose are aware that a threat can come from any angle. But I do think it's really exciting. Jordan Bright has a huge squat on her, the biggest there with 211. But you have people like Andorina Marie who pull into the 230s.
That and sometimes when it comes down to the very last deadlift, although Andorina and also Marie Jose both pull into 230s, and Marta 227 and a half, not too far behind. This is going to be an extremely tight battle. maybe the tightest of all of them. Now, I say that when you look at the 76s, 2.5 kilos separates number one and number two nominations. 2.5 kilos behind that is Clara Perrault of France, junior world champion, moved into the open. And she was junior worlds as a 69, moved up to 76, able to eat into this. Now she's been to 76 for a hot minute here, but it's a battle between Germany, Britain, and France. Um, Mara Bettina and Clara Perrault being heavy on the front end between the three of them. Definitely the front runners for the podium. That means, and I'll get your thoughts here, Amelia, but it doesn't look like they have to look too much behind them where one of them might fall off podium. And that's where when that happens, if someone's close in fourth and you start falling behind at all, now you have to worry about, am I going to get knocked off the podium if I start swinging big in my final pulls? And these ladies are very close. If it is a spread between 1, 2, 3, and the number 4, it makes it far more focused. You don't have to look behind you as much, barring somebody doesn't super surprise you, which can happen. And you're fighting amongst each other for, we're all going to get a medal. What color is it going to be? What are your thoughts on the 76s?
I think the 76ers, like you said, is going to be really exciting in the fact that unless something pretty major happens, we know what the podium will look like, not the order or the color of the medals to whom, but we know that it will more or less be Mara, Bettina, and Clara. Um, and I think it gives a different kind of performance. It gives the lifters an opportunity to take a few more risks, and push each other a little harder without the risk of completely losing a medal, which I think completely changes the way that they approach the game day potentially and how the coaches change the handling. You know, Mara is so incredibly strong, but coming in behind Bettina and Clara, who are both not much younger, but Betty is a 2000 baby, Clara 2002, Mara 1998, so pretty close together. But I mean, it's not even like one of them has a discipline that is so far ahead of everybody else's, maybe Clara's deadlift, but across the board, they're very well-rounded lifters. So it's going to be one of those battles, which I know is kind of cliche to say, that it has to be a near perfect 9 for 9 day for the person to come out on top. I think someone goes 7, 8 for 9, that could be potentially their chance lost, unless they have that big jump on deadlift in their tank.
What do you think about Plundeckers? God bless Plun showing up right now. Um, she's got a bit of a spread in terms of Leah Lucas. Obviously, Plun coming in with 464.5, Leah Lucas 435. And in the 52 kilo class, that is a considerable spread. But she also has the world championships. And Plun is a legitimate threat at the world championships. She was like Kaiko with the bench press. She's almost always going to grab that chip and squat for a world record. And she, if not podium, and Megan Lee Smith is going to have a massive advantage there with coming around 940. But what do you expect from Plun here at Euros? Is this grab a title, knock off some cobwebs here, or is she going to actually go all out?
Plum doesn't strike me as the kind of lifter that would come just to kind of have a quiet day. I think she's gonna come and she's gonna put on what she can put on healthily and sensibly. She's not being, from what we see on nominations, majorly pushed. Obviously, Leia came down from the 57, so her potential as a 52 is potentially untapped to our knowledge. There'll definitely be a bigger battle for the silver and the bronze, in that, if it's based off of nominations. But I see Plum coming in, and giving us a very full hearty performance. I think with potentially the pressure off of somebody behind her, unless Lucas has made some really big progress. I would be surprised if she didn't come in and do what she can, do her best, probably.
As we look at the rest of the women's field in terms of battles, again, we'll put a pin in the 57s for right now, but we do have Sunnita Mulu coming in the 84 pluses. And we have sparing time, Eric, with Amelia. That's why I'm focusing on throwing these questions at Amelia. and God bless you. You're on site, and I know you got to check out relatively quickly. What are your thoughts on Sunnita? Sunnita, and this is what I like. So the European Championships, and this is something I'm going to discuss with Pana when he comes on. Um, some years they have stars like Pana himself, Emil Krastev, Leah Babwa, Turbo Tiff, Sonita, Shell. This year, Jurens Kangamu. This year, not quite as many in terms of the star power. Got to be said. Sunita's showing up, and this is a very difficult schedule for Sunita in terms of Sheffield, Euros, World Championships, conceivably Sheffield all over again, and God knows what in the interim. What do you think is going to happen with Sunnita here? Sunnita has quite the spread in the 84 pluses. Is this her collecting another international title? And what do you think her motivation is?
Is that a question
I'm
to
sending
me
it
or
to
was that to
I'm sending it to Amelia while we got her because I know we got short
that's what I
Oh,
fuse
figured?
here.
sorry. Sorry. I missed Eric's voice. That was all. Um, I think from my understanding, Sunita and Team Belgium aren't gonna miss an international. I think it's something that, they're quite proud of doing, making sure they send someone to represent. And also, I don't think Sunita wants to lose a title that she can probably pick up relatively easily or very easily. Um, and that's no disrespect to the rest of the girls who are going to be lifting some huge weights and in some categories outlifting Sunita in bench and deadlift, obviously not in the squat. But I see Sunita coming in. It gives her a bit of room to have a play around and kind of look for the day that she wants to have. I can't imagine she's going to be looking to push up any records any higher. But actually saying that, Sunita can be quite unpredictable like that. Sometimes she just is feeling it and she'll come in and go, you know what, I want to try for that record today. So I'm actually not too sure, but I know that she'll come in, she'll do her thing and give everyone a good show.
Let's talk about the men's on the 74 kilo class. We got ourselves a battle that's relatively tight. The 74s on the men's side, we have a few different battles, but the 74s in particular, Christos from Cyprus with 726.5. Giacomo from Italy with 722.5, and they're just 2.5 kilos below him. Your fellow Brit, Deuce Samdu. What is your impression of these 74s, and what are you anticipating? Obviously, in terms of weapons, when it comes to a close battle, Christos with the bigger deadlift at 291.5, he's going to have the last say conceivably on here. This is a relatively close battle. What do you think is going to happen here, Amelia? What are your thoughts on this one?
It's really hard to say because, like you're saying about Sunita, some of the names are newer coming in on the international level. The 74s, the top three 74s, like you said, other than the deadlift, are very evenly matched. Giacomo and Sam basically kilo for kilo across the board, bar a couple of, here in bench and deadlift being spared. But with Christos, not knowing immediately how his training has been going or seen him compete recently, he obviously on paper has the final pull, and it's quite a bit heavier than Giacomo and Sam's. So I think if he is in a position to load what he needs to secure that crown, that's exactly what he's going to do. But from what I know of Sanju, he's a very consistent lifter. He's very good at a 9 for 9 day. So if it comes down to that, he's going to be pretty reliable for it. So I think it will be a case of Giacomo and Sam going for that 9 for 9 day and Christos looking just to put on whatever he needs on that final pull because he has that slight advantage there.
It's interesting because Christos, whom has been international at World Championships or Euros since 2022, has only his best performance on the international level, sixth place. So him coming in with a nominated first, he's got an opportunity here. Now we're talking about his deadlift, but if you look at his what he's actually put up, um, I see a 275 at last year's World Championships. At last year's Europeans, I see a 260. I see a 287.5 at the World Championships in Lithuania in 2024. So, and then obviously before that it was 290. in World Championships 2023 in Malta. A stitch uneven. I don't know. Like, I don't got a lot from him in terms of online. So it really depends on if his deadlift's there. When you're looking at these deadlifts, and you might be telling yourself, all right, well, if they're this close and this even Christos with the bigger deadlift, but these other gentlemen are also hitting 270, 275. And if that's where Christoph's going to end up at the end of the day, and not just his deadlift has been a stitch uneven, now two or 726 total fares well, bodes well, but 705 at last year's Worlds when he came in eighth, 680 at last year's Europeans. Kind of depends where he's at. Now, he's not like he's old past his prime over the hill, but what is he going to put together when it comes time for this battle? Because it's going to be a close one. I'm not entirely sure what to make of it. Not all of these gentlemen are posting as much online to be able to scout for it. It gets a little tough. It gets a little sticky there. So we're kind of gleaming in between, trying to read in between the lines on past performances. And ordinarily, if I'm not sure, I'm going to lean on the guy with the bigger deadlift here. I'm not entirely sure. He might.
It's interesting as well because scoping out the open powerlifting and previous competitions and not seeing much online can really be, a blessing or a curse both for him
Mm-hmm.
and for his competitors. Because if it is, this nominated total is accurate and he's been getting stronger and consistently, behind the scenes in the gym, then his competitors are unsure the way that you are, oh, is that legit? Is that something that he's actually coming in with? And it can put them on edge. They don't know what to expect. But obviously, there have been cases that we see athletes in the past get a great nominated total, and perhaps behind the scenes, their training hasn't reflected that quite as well. And so we're all kind of coming in a little bit blind with Christos here, which could work extremely in his favor,
Mm-hmm.
if the numbers are there.
Let me ask you about the 83s while we have you, and you let me know when you gotta go. But because I know you're literally on this, fresh on the scene. We got KOTL fresh on the scene here, ladies and gentlemen. 83s. Enahoro, for a second, I thought he was going 93. Now he's back to the 83s. You check his Instagram. My man is not posting anything. I have no idea where Enahoro's training is. He might be posting his stories, but God bless. They're here and gone in 24 hours. And the world is too big. And I was at US Nats this whole, like, I'm not paying attention that closely. You can't for every single lifter. So it slipped by me if he's posting anything. But Callie, on the other hand, coming just for, he's not posting everything, but his squat is blowing up. 280 kilos is his nominated squat. I saw him take 275 for 4 in February. Back in January, which is a couple months ago, so this is past, he did 295. We know Cali is head and shoulders where he used to be. These guys we think are going to be neck and neck. Everybody knows Enahoro is going to be pulling last. But and I already said Cali's posting, and we know he's PRing. Exactly where he's not posting everything, but we know he's going to PR. And Enaharo's giving you nothing. I don't know if you got any kind of pipelines in Europe. What you're getting here. But what are your thoughts on this battle of the 83s between a former world champion and a guy who's got a monster biblical deadlift?
Man, and do you know what? Do you remember where he became world champion?
Malta.
It was in 2023 Malta in the exact same venue as he's
Ooh,
going to be
same venue?
competing. Same venue. We
Yep.
are back
Oh,
here
done,
in,
done.
and that's the thing. I think that's going to be in his head. It's the same exact place he did that final pull. We've all seen the video. We've all seen the picture of him, celebrating afterwards. And I think that's going to be, absolutely at the front of his mind. And he is definitely the kind of lifter that would push him and not pressure him. I think that's something that's really driving him. And when he gets here, it's all going to click back into motion. Saying that, you know, Enahoro, like you said, has that absolutely insane deadlift on him. And he's been working on his squat and he's been working on his bench. Like you said, it's less posting and more stories. So it's harder to keep up with as Calais. But, you know, if Enna has the chance to put on that final big deadlift, which he will, and if he's going to try and pull for the win instead of trying to secure anything else, which historically he will, then it's just a case, and I know it sounds silly of him getting it or not. And that ultimately will probably be the decider of who is European champion. And Calais can have the best day possible and push him to load something so silly that it's unlikely. But we've seen Enna get some silly weights up and just miss it on lockout. So really, I think it is going to be so exciting. And I know how often us as commentators, us as podcasters say, "Oh, it's going to come down to that final pull." But like in any gender, any weight class, it never means it more than when Enna Horo is competing.
God bless. How many more minutes do you have?
I got a good couple more minutes. We can shift forwards.
Let me ask you about the 105s. Anatoly bombed out at last year's Worlds. He's back now. And then we have ourselves former world champion Emil Norling and then two-time former junior world champion Regan Stergakis. And a little bit of backstory here. Now, Emil Norling has won the world championships. Usually at Worlds, Anatoly will get the better of Norling, historically speaking. I don't know what the overall record is. It escapes me. But while Anatoly previously collecting world titles, two-time best lifter at Worlds, when they faced off at Euros, Emil Norling would defeat him at Euros the same year. Anatoly would win Worlds and win best lifter. Very interesting. These two's rivalry. Now, Anatoly is coming back from bombing out at last year's Worlds. Training looks good. I've seen some volume he's been posting up, super heavy on squats. Looks a little high to me. That's fine. Sometimes he looks high. He's broken world records at IPF Worlds. He knows the standard, so I'm not super worried about him. Regan hasn't posted a lot. Regan's been relatively quiet. I have no idea where Regan's going to be. He's an absolute stud. The guy posts some massive lifts. I guarantee you he's the youngest of the bunch. He's going to have the most progress of them, no question. But I'm not sure where he's going to be. But we're talking about Emil Norling. Monster total at Sheffield compared to these other 105s. By far the biggest, strongest man in the room. If he could bring that total with him. Caveat, he was 6 kilos over. I am not entirely sure what to glean from this. What are your thoughts, Amelia? This is a tough one.
It is, and it's they all have they all have really strong attributes and also something that pulls them back a little bit. Anatoly is a beautiful squatter, and 9 times out of 10, it is a picture perfect squat. So I'm not too worried about the depth. I've not seen his training squats like you have, but I feel like he's a trustworthy person to believe and trust in on squats. There's been, like you said, a huge back and forth between him and Emil. And I think it might stay as that. Reagan didn't have the best. He won Junior Worlds, but he didn't have the best day. He almost bombed out on bench. And I think he's going to want to prove something after that because he is well capable of competing with these big boys with, names like Emil and Anatoly. So I'm sure he's coming back in with, a vengeance and with a point to prove. Um, Emil and Reagan both have huge pulls on them, so have that kind of last chance to outpull Anatoly where he makes a huge amount up in his subtotal. Um, Emil has been looking so, so strong. And like you said, that performance at Sheffield was incredible. Um, Eric's probably a better person to speak on what 6 kilos looks like in terms of, strength and effort to a man of that size. At 55 kilos myself, I can't personally relate to what 6 kilos will do in terms of strength, relative strength. But if he can maintain that, which we see a lot of athletes, cut down a lot more weight and do so, then, it's really his to lose.
Because, well, here's like Emil's also not posting. Like, here's the problem: our European brothers and sisters got to post a little more for us trying to scout. But, anyways, 957.5 at Sheffield. That
Yeah.
is quite a spread. If you could bring that down to the 105s. While I got you, I'm going to keep asking you. I'm going to ask you another question here. I'll dive into Eric in terms of his thoughts on dropping 6 kilos body weight, which again, when you're that massive, he was massive at Sheffield. It's
Yeah.
not as big percentage wise, but if he can carry even a stitch of that down, he's the favorite in my book. We'll talk about that, and Penn will be joining us later on. But I'd be remiss if I got you and we don't talk about the 120s. It's Penna's boy Brutus Antoine, who made it to Euros and also made it to the World Championships. He's battling Money Mo, Great Britain's favorite son, and then of course Taras from Ukraine. All of these. So Antoine Brutus 936, Money Mo 932.5, and Taras 932.5, and not far off of him from Spain, Victor Vasquez with 930. Now, previously we talked about if you have three people in the top three, amongst them battling, it's who's going to get what medal. Now you got to look behind you. Now somebody's going to have to decide, do I keep battling to win the overall title because they're all going to be close enough, or am I defending getting a medal altogether? This is a tough one. What are your thoughts on the battle of the 120s?
This is, I think, maybe the closest in the men's side because, like you said, there are way more names in the hat, and even with Thomas Hautala from Finland, who the spread between him and first is 16 kilos of nominations, but with Mo, Taras, and Victor all fighting upwards, I imagine, and pushing to kind of move up in their ranking. Like I said before, there's a huge opportunity for Hautala to kind of sneak into the cracks if any appear. Antoine, a couple of years ago, I think it was at Euros, hurt himself and he could only really bench from memory. So he's had a really strong comeback, and his training heading into this has looked really, really good. Um, and I think he is in a really good position if he can have a consistent day. We've not seen him otherwise compete too frequently on the international circuit, but if he can translate healthily what he's been doing in training, then he's a real threat for the title. Um, and then it's a case of, Mo, we've seen at Sheffield, we've seen at Worlds, we've seen at Euros. He's an incredible athlete, and he's tied right there with Taras, who dominated in the juniors for years, and I'm pretty sure in equipped and in classic. And I just don't think the last couple of times has had the best performances internationally. So again, if he can pull it together, then I think that might be our top three. Um, but I've got a good feeling about Antoine, and I think the battle will very much be between him and Mo for that overall title.
I also noticed so Money Mo in the gym, anyways, he's in the 940s and up, and he ate into the 120s. He's definitely stronger than his nominated total. He's stronger than conceivably what you might think you have from Brutus. I'll get on Brutus in a second. And again, Pana joining in a stitch. We'll have obviously coaches Brutus, so we could have more in there. But do you know why he's posting videos of him now pulling conventional, and he's a conventional puller all of a sudden? Do you have any background into that?
For Antoine?
No, Money
Mo.
Mo.
Oh, I have no background for it. I know that in the past, Mo's dealt with, cramping, and he struggled with that on his grip on deadlift. So the only logical thing, unless he's just playing around with conventional, is maybe it's to aid that. But I have no background on why that is. Maybe it's just a switch up or.
And so this 945 total, again, this is from early January. I see some fatigue single in February, and then beyond that, he's not showing a lot. Now we're halfway through March. It's not the that's when it's 2 months ago and you're seeing some big numbers, like anything can happen in 2 months from the middle of January to the middle of March. So I don't know, freaking know. I know his top end though, he's eating into it. I don't think he's filled it out, and you're seeing big numbers for him. That's a number that could win it. But again, I don't know what I don't, unless you're directly messaging him, it's hard to tell. And AJ Sharma 120 plus, he's looking strong in prep. He's going to be relatively unopposed. He's got 22 and a half now. Cenk Kochak from Turkey has an absolutely monster deadlift if it shows up. He's tried to pull over 400 kilos several times in comp. So it says 372.5. I've seen him pull monster pulls in training. God knows if he's got a big one, if he can cover that gap. I mean, it's not totally inconceivable, but it'd be surprising. I think AJ is probably the more well-rounded lifter. He's got a big deadlift himself. On paper, 370 against 372.5 looks relatively close, but if Jank can get that big final pull, it should be his. Amelia, how much time do you got left here?
I probably have to head out right about now. But it's
Right
been a
about
pleasure
now.
as always. Right, Funk Soul Brother. Um,
Amelia, great to see you. Thank you for that. And I think Ryan, I can add some good color to some of the classes that we went through, and we can talk a little bit more depth. But Amelia,
Beautiful.
awesome to get all that insight. Yeah, thank you.
yeah, thank you so much, guys. Have fun, and I'll see everyone at Euros tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll talk on the other side of this, and yeah, we'll talk in our DMs and group chats. Thank you, Amelia. Much appreciated. You're a trooper and a gamer for jumping on here.
Bye, guys.
See
Take
ya.
care.
Okay.
So
So I think our boy Pana, I think he's looking at his 10 p.m. instead of 9 p.m. So I think he's
yep.
going to be on in about 20, but me and you could talk about, and he'll probably dive into more of his specific highlights of his athletes. But what we did, sir, me and Amelia just looked at some of the, I got our ideas on some of the battles from the women's side and the men's side. Which battles did you want to look at?
Well, I think there's some good color that we can add around the edges since you guys ran through a lot of the weight classes and just some interesting things to consider
Okay.
that are going to make this really interesting. So, one thing is that because there are European and world records, that some of these battles are going to be interesting. You know,
Mm,
so, for example, you've got Plune Deckers, who has a potential opportunity. She holds the European record in the squat at 179 and a half. So, she might be in a position to nudge that up. So that's something to kind of watch for a record there. And I do think she's a front runner, but it's going to be a really good opportunity to see, how much she's improved and how she's going to fare at the world level, where that 52 kilo class is just getting, it's still very competitive. Megan Lee Smith moving up, so that'll be kind of a nice little preview. Leah Lucas, you might remember we talked about her before the world preview last year, and I think she totaled like 420, and we kind of kept an eye on her, and she has been, even though she moved down a weight class, she's moved up her total into that
mm,
435 range. So, we talked about this, I think, on the PA recap, how when you first move down into a weight class, you're kind of figuring out the cut, how much strength you can preserve, and trying to figure out exactly how to do that in the best way possible. And when she totaled 435, she had actually a 7.5 kilo jump to her last deadlift and missed that. So this is someone who could come in and total 440 if she's got everything locked in, and she's getting more and more comfortable with that 52 kilo class that she only has been doing since last year. So I don't know if that's enough to really challenge Plune, but it will give enough of like that kind of keeping honest thing. So it will be interesting to
mm.
see how that plays out. I think that's worth mentioning. And yeah, there's a few others there. I think it's worth bringing up that. Some of these classes, while they aren't necessarily going to be dictating who's going to be super competitive at Worlds, there's going to be some tight ones, which I think is cool. I think the 76 kilo women's class is also quite tight. And Clara Perot, she's nominated at 555, but I think it's just worth remembering that I think she won Euros last year with 567. So that kind of grouping, it's very tight between those top three.
Mm.
Between Germany, France, and the UK. So that's going to be pretty cool. That's going to be a nice little battle to watch, even if you know, as we all saw after the at the end of PA. We know who's coming from the US, who's going to, really be a dominant threat for Worlds. And of course, I'm not going to turn this into a Worlds preview show. But yeah, that the 76 kilo class is going to be, I think, a very tight, maybe the tightest of the women's races, which will be pretty cool to see. And 84s, I think, kind of Similar thing, you've got the beast from the US who's going to probably be ahead of the pack, but there's a nice little battle here. I think Ali O'Reilly from Ireland is on the same nominated total as Agnes Ruden from Sweden, and then you just have France, and then Kristen Thorsdottir is probably going to win at 570, but there's a real tight battle for the silver and the bronze spot between those other three lifters. So there's some cool stuff going on, and yeah, just because I think Sunnita is way ahead of the pack, I think we kind of know that she's going to win probably on openers. But I do wonder, she's going for like these personal squat accomplishments, trying to see if she can get 325, and maybe she wants to save it for Worlds. But does she decide to maybe just be like, you know what, I could just go zero point 0.5, I could just chip my world record at Euros. I think why not, right? Maybe she feels like she can hold back a little bit and potentially do something like a 319 squat. I don't know. I don't know.
Mm.
It'd be interesting to see where her head's at, but that would be pretty cool, just to see her bump that up. And she has previously, pushed some records at Euros before, so I think that that's going to be fun to watch, even if she is like far and ahead of front runner. And also, in the same weight class, Amelie Mergier, she's got the European bench press record of 166.5, and she might be looking to push that, go up to 167 if it's in the tank on that day. So that'd be also pretty cool to watch. So yeah, that's on the women's side. I thought those were some things worth bringing up that were pretty cool. And also, I believe from Great Britain, I'm not sure if Amelia brought this up, but Toyosi, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her first name right. I think she's nominated like a 267 deadlift, so she's pretty damn close. I mean, if she's gotten stronger than her nomination at being able to potentially put up a pretty monster deadlift. And I don't think Sunnita is looking to empty the tank there, because I know that her squat and deadlift are typically she's got one or the other, and they fatigue one another, and her deadlift is
Mm.
a little bit hit and miss. So it might be that we actually see Great Britain pulling last and potentially trying to throw up something that is pretty impressive. I'm not sure off the top of my head what the European deadlift record is in the 84 pluses, but it can't be much higher than that, right?
Let me ask you real quick then. As we look at the European, this is for the Euro roster. It appears as though, judging off nominations, France has a decent shot at clinching on the women's side. If we stay just on the women's side for right now,
Hmm.
do you think they're the far and away front runners for grabbing the women's Euros? And well, I got a follow up question, but let me get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, yeah. I think France, they've got a couple people who are looking at I think winning their class. I want to say 57s, 47s. And then they've got almost every weight class, they got somebody who's definitely threatening for the podium. So if you kind of add it up, and I know I'm probably good that I waited until until Amelia left to say this, and that Matt isn't on this call. I think the Brits will probably have something to say about the prediction that France is going to win. I think they feel like they've got a lot of contenders and they're right in there in the mix, and they absolutely do. But I think it's going to be tough to surmount having someone on the podium and two potential almost locks for first in every women's weight class. So I do think we're going to see France probably pull ahead here. That would be my prediction.
So, having said that, obviously between France and Italy is definitely on the rise, and you
This is true.
have Italian superstars from 57, 63, all the way up to 69, of course, and with Corolla Gara 69, Chiara Bernardi 63, Serenaldi, but even Annalisa in the 47s,
Hmm.
and none of them are going to be appearing at Euros. Is this somewhat of a surprise to you how yesteryear we would have seen them at Euros? The team Italy is a lot more potent in the European continent than you would be able to glean from just the European Championship. And while, yes, to take a break between now and Worlds, I got you, but US Nationals was literally just concluded a few days ago, and Euros is a week later. Not the craziest spread. A lot of these Americans, and we're talking everyone from people who have already in some of these lifters I just named from Italy, were at Sheffield. A lot of these Americans were Sheffield, two American nationals, two the World Championships. What are your thoughts on these people not coming to
Mm.
Euros, and how much of a impact is it?
Yeah, I do wonder, and I don't, like there's a language barrier for both of us here, and you've done some really good interviews with some of the Italian lifters, and I do have some close friends in Italy who are in the powerlifting scene, and they've got their perspective, but I think there's a notable difference between France, the UK compared to Italy. It's one thing to say all of them have a lot of depth and they are coming up, and that is true. And it looks a little patchy here and there, and like Turbo Tiff doesn't win, and we go, oh, is France done? Because like they didn't have world champions, but I think that's probably a premature thing and more of just circumstances. I think all three of these teams are very strong, but the difference between France and the UK compared to Italy is I think they have more team cohesion. I think there's a little more of a grouping, and you see like blocks of lifters trained together, coaches, and a little more of a systematic approach. To me, it seems like Italy is a handful of very, very good lifters and an overall powerlifting scene, but I don't know how unified they are as a group. And I
Mm,
wonder if the motivation to go do Europeans, you were mentioning earlier how, like, Netherlands is going to absolutely show up and bring a team to Euros. Like, there's a lot of well-developed, unified federations in Europe, and they show up and show out for Euros because it means something for the team. But in absence of having that kind of team and federation cohesion, is Italy kind of operating with a bunch of individual stars, and they're looking at this as, hey, my pathway is nationals, world champs, and Sheffield, and I'll do Euros maybe if I think it can get me something else, and that's
mm.
perhaps why we're not seeing that same kind of representation. I don't know, but that's my guess, Ryan. I don't know. You've interviewed some of these Italian athletes. Is that something that am I onto something there?
100%. It's funny you say that because I actually asked them, and a lot of it is geographically speaking. So I'll ask like Sabrinaldi, Gara, and them, how close are you? Chiara, how close are you guys? And Elisa. I haven't spoken to Elisa, but asked them about them, and they're not close. They're not in close proximity. They can't. It's not like when you see these American lifters and it feels like everybody's from Houston, huh? Like everybody's coming from Texas for some reason, and you have like four world champions all at once. Or in France, when you have Leah, Tiff, Brutus, who's at these Euros, going to be at World Championships, as well as Panagiotis, uh, Coco Clement, all training together
Hmm.
at the same
Yeah.
time. And if not, and if someone are elsewhere, like Jacob, their club has a bunch of people still from there as well. So there isn't geographically speaking, they're not as together, and that's also true of Britain. However, what Britain does that's a little bit different, and Matt Gary's spoken to it, is they purposely bring them together for team training together. So, and then Matt Gary runs through a quick catch up as a team, some goals, blah, 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 but they do it as a team. They collectively come together for this. France actually does the same thing, to your point, that France also collectively comes together. They do their photo shoots, they do some training sessions together. And then the coaching staff has some questions to ask. Where's body weight at? Where's any concerns with injuries? Blah, blah, blah. They'll do follow up as well online, but there is a little bit more of that. And if I may, and I'm guessing here, while Italy is catching up and Italy is definitely on the rise, I think depth wise, they can't compete with France yet, or maybe even the UK. Their front end, their number 157, might be the number one in the world. Their number 169 might be the number one in the world. On paper, nomination, she will be. Their number 147 is, I'm not sure when Elise is going to step the 47s, God bless. Again, won't turn this into a world's preview show, but you see what happened at American Nationals, you see what happened at Canadian Nationals, and then, of course,
Yeah.
Turbo Tiff. But their 47 is definitely world class. But beyond their number ones in these different weight classes, their number two is not quite as potent as, for instance, France can send all their number ones to worlds and all their number twos to Euros and still probably France could probably win all of Euros. And that's the difference
Yeah.
as well as the depth.
And I do have something to say that on the coaching side. So Ryan, I'm very fortunate in that I have some connections who are bilingual who have like enabled me to translate my books into Italian. So my books have been very popular in Italy on
No
training and
kidding.
nutrition. Yeah, no, I'm really fortunate for that. And one thing that's been interesting is that I occasionally get reached out to do speaking events and where places basically where my information has penetrated a bit in countries that don't have as many English speakers. So while Europe is got a lot of people who can speak English, obviously there are certain pockets and countries where that's not the case. So like for example, France and Italy are generally not filled with a bunch of people who speak really fluent English. And that's very different to, say, Germany or Northern Europe if you go to Scandinavia or of course, the UK, where that is the first language. So that produces some interesting things. Like if you talk to Pana, and I know he would confirm this, he thinks that a large part of, France kind of making a leap forward is not just the talent and the popularity of powerlifting, but also some of the efforts that he's made, and I think big kudos to him to bring some of the coaching and powerlifting information to that region. He has a very large influence. He considers himself a student of Mike T, for example, bringing emerging strategies. So I've had a number of opportunities to talk to bilingual Italian coaches, and they are
Mm.
sharing with me, what I think what's holding us back is that a lot of the coaches are really, really stuck on certain systems that may be a bit archaic. Like there's a specific way to squat. Here's the right way, and if it doesn't look good, let's pull that number back. And I wonder if that's hurting some of the development of the lifters there, where they're kind of holding on to methods that are constraining the top end strength of a lot of the lifters who, with some good coaching, could be in those kind of mid tier and sub elite status to fill out a good team and to provide more competition at the national level. That is potentially holding them back. And what we're seeing is like the true cream of the crop. These truly standout, impressive stars, your Serenaldis, your Carola Garas, who are talented enough and have the right opportunities that they're just not going to get bogged down in some of those things or be held back by it. So I do wonder if that's a bit of it. And because I get to do these interviews and how a podcast goes, you talk for 10 minutes before you jump on, and the coach is telling me like, man, it's so hard to get. I bring up these concepts that are part and parcel for you guys and have been for 2 years, and all the coaches are just like, oh, you can't do that. That's not, I don't know, that's impossible. And then it feels like an uphill battle over there to bring information that maybe in the English speaking world is a little more ahead. So I think that's worth noting, and I don't know how accurate that is, obviously, but I've gotten that feedback from probably 3 or 4 coaches now.
I can also tell you, um, I've had people come in my DMs about the Italian Federation and how they pick international lifters for Euros and Worlds. And I don't know what it's like currently right now, the latest update, but I've had people also with some gripes there in terms of some people who are definitely class and probably could have representation there at Euros and not being sent. Whether or not they can even make it themselves, they won't be sent regardless. I don't know what the case is now, so I'm not going to get too in depth with it, but I do think there are certain roadblocks that some nations do not have to deal with that. Unfortunately, that team does.
Yeah, yeah, and I think even if we don't know the specifics in Italy, I think it is we've both seen in our tenure in the sport, and I think we can both honestly speak in a generality that when a federation doesn't have a good organization or the right people in place or the right philosophies or structure, it can hold back a nation and it leaves you head scratching. I think a really good example of this is how long has it been since we've seen Australia send a robust really good team to IPF Worlds and be dominant. And I would love to say, as someone who's a dual citizen and is a proud Kiwi now and has been here for 14 years, that New Zealand just has that much more talent that despite having a fraction of their population, we're crushing it because we're just that badass. But I think actually the difference, it's not just that there's good cohesion in New Zealand. There is. I was just commentating at Auckland Champs yesterday, and the reason why Rory's not here right now is because he's coaching there. There's a really good energy within New Zealand where no one thinks they're too good to be a volunteer, a coach, an athlete, and like a meet director all at the same time. I watched Evie Corrigan run herself ragged running Commonwealths, and then she's winning a world championship right after that. She's reffing, she's announcing all this stuff. The presidents are athletes, and it's not that there's not a will to do that in Australia. It's just that it's had a lot of unfortunate issues with leadership. There was the
Mm.
massive issue with Wilkes and all that. So you take this nation that has a lot of talent, that it's got a pretty similar culture to New Zealand in many ways, and could have a lot of amazing lifters. And you see some of them stand out, like Natalie Lalai and others. But because they don't necessarily have that structure to support the lifters coming together and they get diversified across other, powerlifting federations, we just don't see them have a presence. And you're going, what's going on there? Right across the pond, and you've got this ridiculous kind of performance by New Zealand. I think in a perfect world, Ryan, what we would see if that same type of organization existed in Australia and New Zealand, we would probably see a similar level of competitiveness that we see between, say, Canada and the US. Because we know that Canada's got a good system, the US has a good system, and we start to see a similar reflection of competitiveness based upon their populations. So these nations can actually more or less, show their potential, and you start to see things shake out when you have, a different population, but a very similar culture. And that, I think, the Canada-US comparison and the New Zealand-Australia comparison is one that does really highlight that. And like I said, neither you or I nor is in Italy, nor do we speak fluent Italian. But you've got to think that's something similar that's going on, right?
Funny, like obviously, Tao, my girlfriend's from Australia. She's actually a part of the Fed. And to your point, like it's relatively early days for them rebuilding
Hmm.
yet again. Yet a freaking again, we thought I'm not gonna divert too much, but they have rebuilt like
Yeah.
3, 4 times over in the past. Way too little. They'll gain some ground eventually, but you have to keep rebuilding each and every time from the membership that left to all the infrastructure in place. But I agree, if they actually get 5 years under them or some time to grow, then it'll be a lot easier. Uh, what they do on their side is they're ingenious and they're creative, etc. But back on to
Yeah.
Euros. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, it even took the U.S., a bit of time before they could really field the proper team they had. You had lifters in USVI, you had the USAPL splitting away, and there was a bit of a vacuum. And even with a country so dominant in powerlifting, it took about a year and a half, 2 years before that split was no longer an issue. And now we see, the vast majority of at least the elite lifters from the U.S. all in PA. So yeah, but back to Euros.
No, okay, well, give me 30 more seconds on because you made a good point. Then we'll go back to Euros.
Go for it.
But
Go for it.
we're loose. I said right off the hop, this is going to be loose because I just came off U.S. Nationals and we're going to put something together for Euros preview show. But I remember year one, it was
Mm,
almost like top end lifters showing up trying to go to Worlds, and then a handful of people here and there. And the first year of America, Powerlifting America was like, I think it was around 40 people. We're talking damn near
yeah.
local meat. Now, the toughest local meat you ever seen in your life. We're talking prime Taylor Atwood, prime Delaney Walls, prime Amanda Lawrence, Jesus Oliveras. Like people are winning world championships, whatever. I mean, let's talk about star-studded local meat. But in terms of the size, in terms of how many people were there, how many officials, it was the wildest. And this was America, the number one
Hmm.
powerlifting nation in the world, for sure. And it took them now took them years, but now okay, they got a decent following, grassroots, etc. A much smaller nation, Australia or any of these nations, when they have to restart again from like right from scratch, building the EC, the executive committee, right on down. It is it's so much work by volunteers who are raising their hands saying, "I'll take it up. I'll do this." And it's possible, and they got a lot of good people in Australia who could do it, but it's a lot of freaking work, my friend. It's a lot of work, and it took US a little bit of running, and then freaking what do you know? I took Tao and she moved over to Canada, and I'm sure that's got people in Australia raising their fists like, "Thanks, dude." No, she's still working with the Fed, but anyways, yeah, back to Euros. We could hold on one second here. Penn has just mentioned me. I think Penn is about to join.
Awesome. Well, then I guess that gives a good opportunity to talk about the men's side of it and, round out some of the color. And of course, Pana will have, insight into some of the
100%.
lifters he works with on the women's side as well. So it'd be great for him to join. But
$100%.
yeah, I totally agree.
Okay, a boy pond is here. And we were talking about the women's. We're going to double back to the 57s for a brief second before we move into the men's. Um, we had Amelia on before she left, and Amelia was covering the women's side, but you have the 57 kilo champ returning here. How has training been with her, and what are your expectations, sir?
Yeah, so so the thing with Sov, it's she's pretty like new to the high level scene, but in reality she's like older than me. I think she's in her like 34s, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously at this age, you don't recover as well as you recovered, in your 20s, obviously. And she had like a very very long season of comps because she did World Games, Girl Power, French Nationals, and now Euros, and all of
Hmm.
that since June essentially. So she's almost competed like every month and a half since then. So obviously, it's hard to create like a very good momentum competing this often, obviously. But yeah, she just crossed the 502.5, so the 5 kilo barrier at French Nationals, and yeah, the goal would be to replicate that, maybe a bit more at Euros, and hopefully get the W for her to become 3 times European champion. That would be amazing.
Now, is she going to be representing France at Worlds as well?
Yeah, she she had a face-off with Jade at French Nationals, and unfortunately, Jade wasn't 100%. So Sovan ended up winning. So she will also be the representative for Worlds as well.
Which is huge for her. And I think
Yeah,
Jade is moving 63,
yeah. On top of that, yeah.
which is pretty wild. So, in terms of that schedule, is that difficult? Because me and Eric were actually talking about how we are missing some of the European stars here. And
Yeah.
so we're previous Euros we'd see from you to Emil to Shell to Leah to Tiff to who the frick ever. Gerans all at the European Championship. You're in Europe. What are your thoughts on why are we missing so many stars?
I'll be honest. I think it's a shitty situation, to be 100% honest, because in one hand, in my opinion, everybody should compete for the European title. But on the other hand, obviously, I understand all of those athletes that you named that don't compete because you have Worlds, you have Sheffield, and the thing is, if you want to compete at Worlds, for example, you have to qualify at Nationals, and maybe Nationals in your country is like the US, it's like a bloodbath in every weight class. So in order to be able to get out of your country, you need to like restrain from competing in order to like be at your best level possible on the day of Nationals or whatever. So, and with the example I just gave you, like for an athlete like Sovan, she competed like almost 6 times since June. So it's a very tough situation, in my opinion. As long as the calendar is set up as it's set up right now, then I don't see a world where like the top level lifters would do like Worlds, Euros, and Sheffield like we used to, quote unquote, some years ago. And yeah, in a way, it's very sad for Euros because it's not as hyped and as competitive as it was. But at the same time, I think some athletes need to like choose their battles wisely, let's say. And in order to do so, you can't battle like every month.
Something interesting, Panna, is we were talking about how the challenge of having PA have so much density in the US that you have these bloodbaths and you have people like sometimes three or four people deep who could potentially win at Worlds fighting within the US. And we were talking about, hey, maybe North Americans is going to become like Euros is. And ironically, what's happened as Europe has gotten even more competitive within each country, it's more like Euros is starting to become what NAPF is. And it's kind of like, oh, maybe I can get this second opportunity to maybe set a world record and hopefully get invited to Sheffield. And I think that's kind of what we're going to see happen with
Yeah.
Euros rather than both kind of being uplifted to the level. Um, and I'm just hoping, I'm not sure if it's a good or bad thing long term, because I do think that as the sport develops, we do need more pathways for like elite, but not quite like top tier athletes to get these opportunities to, threaten and find a second pathway to redemption, like a Taylor going to NAPF, being able to just barely, beat the whatever Joe did. I think that maybe becomes what Euros is rather than it being almost this kind of world's light like it used to be, which
Yeah.
I don't know. Pros and cons, right?
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, go ahead, Penna.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for sure, pros and cons. You're right. I'm glad there are pathways for people, multiple pathways for people. So you have freaking world champions showing up the Euros, and that is a hell of a gatekeep. I got to beat the reigning world champ if I want to, to win world or Euros or for some nations even go to Euros. Like if you're a 63 from France, like I got to beat a prime Leah Bavois to go to Euros. Like, well, I guess I'm not doing internationals this year, am I? And like the standard, I got to beat Carola Gara to go if you're from Italy, or Serenaldi if you're from Italy, just to go to Euros. Well, I guess I'm not doing any international meets. Well, that's great. And in terms of development, to your point, being number two behind Serenaldi, you might be world class. It is important to have you somewhere. It is
Yeah.
important. So I get that. I 100% agree with you. Great point. That's a great counterpoint, actually. But it does hurt me a little. I like World's Light, where Americans have American nationals and they puff their chests out on how tough American nationals is, as they should, because they have so many world champions there. But Euros had Euros. If you're a European, you would say, excuse me, look how many world champions come from Europe. So I am a European champion, or if you're a medalist or whatever, and you had that as a counterbalance in Europe, which I'm not saying it's gone forever, but I could see where due to schedule, this could be tough.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be honest. I'm a bit sad like about the situation because, like you said, some like a couple of years ago, not even a couple of years ago, Euros was something. It was a lot of head-to-head battles. There was something on the line, and it's right now it's almost as if like the European title, lost all meaning essentially, because even if you win and you're in the in one of the weight classes where, like you said, the reigning world champion or one of the top competitors is not competing because he's focusing on worlds or a Sheffield spot or whatever, then it loses a bit of its prestige. I want to say so. Yeah, it's a tough situation. I think it's a tough situation, and the thing is, in my opinion, right now we're in a weird spot because obviously powerlifting is more popular than it probably ever has been, but at the same time, when you push the barrier so much higher, then it will take time for some lifters to catch up. And those years that it will take for those lifters to catch up, maybe it's some years where there's less hype. And if there's less hype, then maybe the sport is not growing as well and as fast as it could be growing. So yeah, very, very tricky situation, I want to say.
I'm not sure what the answer is. Um, if it's just schedule, could you move it? Remember at one point it was at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Now it I'm not sure because obviously you got Sheffield the end of the year as well.
Yeah.
However,
You know, I think I would still put Euros at the end of the year, and so that the Sheffield athletes like don't do Euros because they're doing Sheffield. But then, like you said, Eric, you give an opportunity to like the redemption lifters to be like, oh, I wasn't invited to Sheffield. Let me show you. And then boom,
Mhm.
you can, so you have like a back and forth between Sheffield like in November and Euros in December. So some athletes are like, oh, I'm going to beat this guy from Sheffield. And, in my opinion, that would be better. And also, it's further away from Worlds. So you have more time to actually do both. Because right now, we're in March and Euro and Worlds is in June. So not even 3 months, like 2 months and a half even, and it's hard to really grow and develop within this time frame. So I think actually the better would be to go back to how things were. So Euros in December, right after Sheffield. These Sheffield athletes don't do Euros. Those who didn't do Sheffield and maybe could potentially have the strength to do it can get their redemption meet, and then everybody is clashing once again at Worlds.
Or you have a
Actually,
sorry, go ahead, Eric. Go ahead.
that's a yeah, sorry, just yeah, I think we should just be aware like these scheduling things, they're not fixed, and federations do respond to each other based on this. Um, let's not forget that Carlina, when she totaled 600 kilos on the at Commonwealths, which was in I want to say November before becoming Sheffield, that snagged her the attention of SBD and got her that invite.
Yeah.
And now that a Sheffield moves, a Euros moves, a Commonwealth move. So I think we're going to keep seeing this schedule shift as needed to accommodate kind of the structure that's almost an emergent property of what are the priorities of the sport at the time. So I think so long as we're agile, that we'll be all right. But there is going to be those transition years to Pana's point.
Yeah.
And take a look at this. Consider this. We're talking about Sheffield and people, well, you go to Sheffield, you're not going to go to Euros. Yeah, okay. Every other 74 in the world. Are you beating Perk at Worlds? Perk's going to Sheffield. Every single 74 from Euros or from Europe can go to Euros. You're probably not taking off Sheffield right now, unless you can come 95% of 891. Who's beating who's beating Joe B? You're hoping to be a second 83, but if you don't beat Joe B and you're from Europe, and there's a lot of good European 83s, you're going to Euros. Like, how would you love to see Addy and Jurens at Euros clashing against Inohoro, just like Jurens and Inohoro used to clash at Euros? They won't always get to Sheffield. The 93s. Let's say Will Ball balls out at Worlds. Are you telling me? And let's say Gustav, Emil, don't make it. Ian Dokun, God bless, he's at Euros this year. They say they don't make it to Sheffield because most of them won't. Are you telling me them at Euros wouldn't be phenomenal to see Gustav, Emil, Ian Dokun battle out at? Of course. That is where, and look at the freaking 105s. God bless. I'm glad they're showing up. But the 105s coming from Europe. If you can't be Anthony McNaughton, but you're an Anatoly, you're a Regan Stragakis. Now they're showing up at this Euros. Not this Euros isn't, and I don't want to turn this into like this Euros doesn't have any stars. They do, but they do. And we've already talked about them. They do have some. But if you put Euros at the end of the year, there was a lot of European world class lifters who won't become the world champ. It won't be going to Sheffield. Give them a spot to go to at the end of the year. I think to your point, Eric, this moved, Sheffield moved. Give it a second. Let the European Federation speak and be like, how do we move to collect more lifters? Because it's a stitch lighter, anyways.
Uh, and just for a little bit of history, this actually model worked really well for the Oceania region for a long time. We tragically had the president of the Oceania Powerlifting Federation pass away a while back, and so that competition hasn't happened. But we used to always have like this nice, like you could do provincials, then you could do nationals, then you would do worlds, and if you weren't world lifter, you had the end of the year to do Oceania. And we had a lot of the really good, you'd get to go, like your favorite lifter of all time, Ryan, he was not just battling in the 83s at the world class level. He was also, taking home Oceania titles. Jezo Wepa crushing massive squats. It was always a good time to go to one of the island nations or to the South Island in New Zealand and see Oceania. I got to compete at Oceania the one year it was in Auckland, actually, which was really cool. The first time I got to see Jezo Wepa lift and some of the lifters from out of Nauru. A lot of them don't have the opportunity or the ability to travel all the way to Worlds, and they were able to compete. And you'd see some of that, like Pacific Island talent in Oceania. So it definitely does work, that model. And when it goes away, you see the negative consequences like we've seen here. So I think there's a lot of potential there, and I hope that's something that the EPF is considering as moving it to later in the year. I like that.
Yeah, my favorite lifter of all time is Penigiotis Terranidis. I don't know who you're referring to,
100%.
sir.
That's why I didn't say the
You be
name. I
careful.
don't know what you're
That's
talking
right.
about.
That's right. That's right. That's
Yes,
right.
yes, Penna's classic battles with Russ that we all
Yeah,
remember.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
was
yeah.
gonna say. But all right, let's drive it back here for a second. To this Euros, we do have some clashes. Your boy Brutus in the 120s, he's got this. He always wanted to get on Team France, start lifting internationally. I was telling Eric, stark contrast to Money Mo from Britain. Mo is moving up from the 105s. Now he's been a 120 for a hot minute now, but he's probably not going to fill at the weight class or cut. Brutus is a monster. Brutus is huge. He looks like he's straight out of a comic book. This is his first stop on the way to Worlds, but this is far too close to be a pit stop or just a tune-up. This one is neck and neck. And Money Mo's putting up some big lifts on his post. Um, I don't know if you've seen the 945, but I don't know where he's going to be at on the day. Obviously, it's anybody's game. What are your thoughts on the 120s? How ready is Brutus, and how is Brutus taking this on his way to Worlds?
Yeah, so I just it's not because I coach him, but because I coach him, I know exactly what like he went through, and some people don't realize it, but Brutus essentially decided to like slow down his rate of progress on social media to focus on powerlifting. Um, because obviously when you want to really grow a lot on social media, you have to travel, you have to do collabs, you have to do this, you have to do that, and it's in a way when we're talking high level, like the highest level of competition, you can't do both. Like you can't travel across the world, do a lot of content, and at the same time train properly like a top level powerlifter should. So he actually put a lot on the line. And I remember some years ago, some lifters in France, like probably out of jealousy or hate or whatever, they were like, "Oh, he's not a lifter; he's an influencer, and he pretends to be a lifter." And I saw something from Pianats that like Cranon Warford, she kind of went through the same thing where she was like, "Yes, I'm big on social media, but I'm not an influence. I'm not just an influencer. I'm also an athlete. I'm a high level powerlifter." And Bruce actually went through the same thing. So this year, when he won French nationals and he got his ticket to Worlds and Euros, for me was such a feel good moment because he was like proving everybody wrong and also getting the fruits of those sacrifices that he made for years now and becoming like the 120 French lifter at least this year to do Worlds and Euros. And whether it's him on his end or me on my end, the way we view it is, like you said, it's not just a quick stop before Worlds. It's like an opportunity and a chance to grab his first international title. Obviously, it's the European one, but for us, at least, it matters. So yeah, we're happy actually that he has a very very fierce competitor against him, which is Mo. And yeah, like you said, I know that Mo's registered total is not actually reflecting how strong he really is. And we're aware of that with Brutus. So obviously, the goal is to do his absolute best on the day. And like you said, it could be anybody's game. Um, the way I view things is so Mo will probably out squat Brutus. Then on bench, we will probably cover some ground. And then I think that Brutus could actually be a bit stronger than Mo on deadlifts. Slightly. Not a whole lot, but slightly. So it's really
Wow.
just how much can we like how much can we avoid getting out squatted by? How much ground can we cover on the bench? And then I'm calling it, but most likely we'll take the final pull to pull whatever we need for the win.
And I got a couple questions here, but how much of a threat do you think from Ukraine, Taras Melnichuk, as well as Victor Vasquez from Spain, who aren't far off? They're like 6 kilos off on nominations. Are you keeping an eye on it? Here's the problem when it's this close of a race and you have this many people clustering near the top. 6 kilos separate four different lifters. You not only have to worry about Money Mo, you got to worry about somebody making a Hail Mary pass at the end. These guys have registered final pulls of 355 each, but who knows? It only
Yeah.
takes a 10-kilo jump, and all of a sudden they're in the mix.
Yeah, but so first, to the Matt Garys of the world, I won't be handling Brutus. So I didn't do any scouting because I won't be there like on game day to like make the calls because since he's in the national team with Team France, there's like the national staff and you can't have your own personal coach backstage.
So
So
you won't be in Malta?
I'll probably be there, but like in the audience. So there's no
Okay.
way for me to
Because
make calls.
I heard it. Is it the same venue that you won the World Championships?
That's a good question. I haven't checked. Maybe it
If
is.
it is, dog, if it is, stop.
If it
Tell
is,
me you're not going to get emotional. Dog, stop.
I
If
will
it's
get
the
emotional.
same venue, oh my Lord, when you walk
Yeah,
back in there, you
yeah,
know you're going to be like, holy shit.
yeah,
That was
yeah.
crazy. But
100%.
anyways, but I
Yeah, so
digress. Yeah, yeah. Either way, so sorry, you were saying now you got Eric, you were saying.
Yeah. I think there's some interesting things here. Ryan, if we look at the nominations, right, it looks like we've got this super tight grouping, from 920 to 936 making up our top five, right? But I think if you look at the who these lifters are, if you look at like the lifter from Spain, lifter from Ukraine, lifter from Finland, um, they're if you look at their open powerlifting, their best lifts kind of are pretty close to their totals. And unlike, say, a Mo, who is coming into the weight class, and I know you said he's been at 120 for a top minute, but he hasn't fully filled it out. And there is some changes in his deadlift technique, which, we could speculate as to why that's happening. And then also, from what Pana just said, it sounds like, you know, Antoine is not necessarily his nomination doesn't reflect his capabilities. So I think what we're probably seeing is a top two nominations that are perhaps underestimating by a fair bit the true potential, and then the next cluster of people who are close, those probably are a little more representative. So I think that's pretty interesting. So this battle is probably tighter or as tight as it looks between the top two. And then it might not be as tight as it looks between the top five all amongst each other, but there might be a nice little battle for the bronze. So that I think that should be kind of a cool double race to watch. And then of course, when you got two people who are vying for a top spot and they're also both big deadlifters, one of them screws up or says, "Screw it, I'm going for the win." Someone from can come from behind and sneak a silver that they otherwise would not have had if they had those two people not looking in their rearview mirror, right? So
yeah,
I think
100%.
this will be an interesting thing to play out.
Yeah, I think to your
Oh,
point.
by the way, last thing. So we were talking about people who are lifters, but maybe they're actually influencers. I remember hearing from a very reliable source a little while ago, I think his name is Jonathan Garcia, that there was one of the other 66s who it was just a social media influencer, not a real lifter. I don't know if do you have any commentary on that, Pana? I don't know if
Okay,
you
let's
remember
leave a
that.
dog's line. Let's leave a dog's line.
No,
Spetta, you were going to say
just
though.
sending my love to Lord Farquhar. Just sending my love to Lord Farquhar. Now, I was about to say, yeah, to your point, Eric. I think when you're a big deadlifter, you can't do like two very heavy pulls back to back. So let's say their top end is like 390. It's almost impossible for them to have a second attempt at 380, 382, because then you just gas out and then you leave the opportunity for the other like to take the upper hand. So unfortunately, and like we saw at US Nats in some weight classes, hey, you gotta send it, and exactly like Delaney did for his final pull,
Hmm.
and when he missed that pull, he got knocked off the podium. Whereas in reality, he was the second strongest 93 on the day.
Mhm.
So yeah, to your point, at some point you just gotta play the game. I mean,
Yeah.
that will be true, I think, for Mo also. That will be true for Brutus, for Antoine. You don't have a choice. You load it, and if it's there, congrats, you're the champion. If it's not, maybe you're third or even knocked off podium. So that's the game we're playing.
I'm guaranteeing Brutus is pulling for Euro gold no matter what.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, 100%. You know,
That's what
at French nationals, because he was against Nicolas, and he was like, I was doing the math, etc., and I said, maybe we need to leave 390 kg as your final pool, and he's like, I'm down, let's do it. Like,
Mm.
no sign of hesitation. And I think on the day he was good enough to pull it. So yeah, I don't see a world where Antoine doesn't take the upper hand. Obviously, if he's feeling good on the day, right? But yeah, if he's feeling good on the day, he will take the final say on deadlifts. And who would have thought that maybe Antoine will have the final say on deadlift against a deadlift monster like Money Mo? So that would be a very very good battle.
Let me ask
Let
you,
me ask you this, Pana. Oh,
go
Oh,
ahead, Eric.
I stole
you
your
have a question.
line and
Wait,
everything.
you have a
No,
question.
no. You go first. You
So,
go first.
okay. Because, I've been watching, Mo's career ever since I met him at Sheffield, and just really awesome guy.
Yeah.
I know that he has not yet been able to put together each one of his full capability on the lifts on the same day. And if you were to truly look at what his best registered competition numbers are, we're looking at a total that's like 960, something crazy like that, right? Um, I do wonder now that he's had more time to fill out and we see him experimenting with conventional and he's looking. I'm thinking maybe this is as his body grows and he sees that sumo's a little more inconsistent. Is he looking for something that's going to be a little more reliable? And then he doesn't have to maybe hold back as much on the squat. And hopefully, he's not in these tight battles where he has to overextend himself. If he sits there and builds a total and is just a little more conservative than normal and is able to put together something near his top end on the subtotal and then put together a good pull, is he catchable if we're talking 950 plus?
Yeah, could be.
Okay. I'm
Around
excited. Yeah.
950, around 950, yeah. If it's more around
Mm.
960, I think it
Okay.
will be just a bit too short, uh, like for Antoine right now. But if it's around 950-ish, yeah, yeah.
That's a bit. I would like to see totals end up there. Where is Brutus's body weight right now?
He's like 121, 122. So essentially, he just
Okay.
has to be careful like a day prior, and he's at weight. So
Like, he doesn't cut water then.
nah, no, not yet. I think so. When he started, he was actually like 110, 112. So he was able to put up like a good solid like 10, even a bit more than that in terms of like muscle mass.
That's
But yeah,
crazy.
I think in order to be like more competitive, he would have to be, I think, 125 and then do a water and gut cut to be a 120. But at least right now, it's not really doable for him, because he doesn't eat enough. And I will give him the same speech that you gave me at Sheffield.
That's right.
Come on, man. Come
Come
on,
on,
man.
man. Your prime is this big. Your prime is this big. You got it. You got to rock and roll, dude. Eric Brutus. I don't know if you met him in real life. He's like 6'7". He's a freaking monster. He 100% could be 125 kilos, and 5 kilos is not like a small cut. But when you're already 125, percentage wise, it isn't crazy. I mean, Jessica
Yeah.
Bittner. I don't gotta tell you, would cut 5 kilos, and she was like freaking a 76. For God's sake, so he could cut 5 kilos, and him at 125. You're right, Pana. Like him putting on 10 kilos of muscle, that's 22 pounds of muscle mass is crazy. And it's muscle. The guy's not
Yeah.
fat at all.
Oh, yeah.
If he puts on another 5 kilos of muscle mass, like, yes, that is when the weights are, that's when he's going to start getting pushing closer and closer, like 1,000 kilos, which you got to
I
be
mean,
if you're going to be 120.
look at what just 6 kilos of added body weight did to Ashton squat. you know.
Yes.
So I think the
Yeah.
proof is in the pudding, right?
Proof is in the pudding, my man. Get those guys eating pudding. All right. What about the 105s? What are your thoughts on this, man? Here's the thing. Emil Norling is not posting. Reagan has not posted any prep. Anatoly's posting volume squats. You don't have a lot to glean. Anatoly's coming off bombing, and he probably wants a redemption arc. Emil posted up a huge 957 and a half at Sheffield. It was at 111 kilos body weight. He's got to cut the 105. Not crazy, but probably hamper him. But he's got the bigger top end total nevertheless. But then you got Regan Stragakis, two-time junior world champ, probably pacing extremely well, has not shown his cards, but he's young and he's pacing faster than these gentlemen one might think. I got no freaking idea how this is going to go because nobody's showing where they're at. But this is a legitimate top end world class showdown by all of them winning world championships. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, like you said, I think it's really hard to project a lot of things because of all of the circumstances that you just gave us. So I think um, if I had to choose, I would probably choose between Emil or Anatoly, because Anatoly has been very, very consistent as a lifter for years and years and years, like always in the battles to win in the 105s. But he has his bombing out. I think it was deadlift, right?
He
Hmm.
bombed out on deads, and that attempt selection, I
Yeah,
have no idea what the heck they were thinking. They were way too aggressive.
yeah, 100%. So the thing is, when you're not a deadlifter, it's not easy because Emil could load like 385 and go pull it. Regin is also like a crazy deadlifter, so he could also do the same. So my guess is if Anatoly is putting up like a crazy subtotal and his deadlift grip is holding up, then maybe he could put up a total that would be just slightly out of reach for Emil and Regin. But at the same time, if he doesn't do that, then the door is wide open because both of them can pull 380, 380 plus, and just take the W. So I would say if it goes like crazy, crazy big subtotal by Anatoly and his deadlift grip is holding up, he probably takes the W. And if not, I do see an upset by Regin, actually. I can see that.
If
Yeah.
Emil had been hampered by injuries and Emil, those extra calories helped clear them up. If
Yeah.
he could sustain the cut, 957 and a half, oh man, that's going to be a tough. That's going to be a tough go for these other 105s. I'm not sure because no one's showing. I got no freaking idea.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys, and then we'll wrap this up. We'll keep it nice and sweet, short and sweet here. Who is your pick nation wise? Pana, I'll ask you for the women and also for the men. And I think I already asked you for the women, right, Eric?
You did.
Okay. What's your pick for nations on the women and men's side?
Unfortunately, I have to be 100% biased here. I have to go with Team France. Sorry, guys.
For both?
No, I think. Sorry.
For both?
Yeah, yeah, both. I think um, we actually have a decent team this year round. Obviously, a couple of big lifters are not there. Like on the women's side, if we had Leah, if we had Tiff, then I think it's a no-brainer. But we do have some good lifters in some of those weight classes. And then just to be 100% honest, like I don't know like all of the other teams, so I'll go Team France.
France is definitely on the front runner on the women's side, even if a lot of their top end stars are going to worlds. They're a front runner on the women's side. On the men's side, I think in Team GB looks pretty strong
Yeah.
and pretty healthy, and they got Matt Gary, so they're not probably going to make too many mistakes in terms of attempt selection. They're going to be tough. They're going to be tough to beat. Eric, what are you thinking?
I think it's going to be between France and GB on the men's side too. I mean, you guys have got Antoine Garcia in the 59s, Sasha in the 66s. I want to say There's a
Matisse.
lifter in the 83s
Yeah,
who's potentially
Yeah,
going to
Matisse.
be on the podium. Yep,
Yeah.
yep. And then
Unfortunately, we had one. We had Rico that just pulled out of the
Rico Knight.
93s.
oh, Rico
Oh,
pulled
did he
out.
pull
Oh,
out?
okay.
Yeah, he pulled out.
Mm,
That changes
that
things
changes
big
things.
time.
I think they just
Yeah,
Yep,
but
announced
go
that
it
on.
like today or
yeah, well
yesterday.
okay. Well, that'll tip me over. I think probably and I don't think by a strong lead, but I think that's probably going to be GB because that's giving up one of the podium spots that was probably a lock
Yeah.
for
Mhm.
France. Yeah, yeah.
But
Um,
do JB have a 120 plus?
Yeah,
AJ
AJ, the
Sharma.
number one. Yeah, he's the
Yeah,
number
Yeah,
one
he's front
120 guy.
runner.
yes. Yeah, then I think unless we have like 59 win, 66 win,
And they're the front
83,
runners.
83 seconds, and then maybe if Brutus takes the W, who knows?
Yeah, I
83
think
second is
83 is going to be a tall order because if you look at Cali, who, as you know, in 2023 famously actually
Yeah.
got the 74 kilo world title,
Malta.
he just squatted 275. Yeah, what did I say?
No,
I
you're right.
said
I was
20.
just adding the location.
Oh, sorry, apologies. Yeah, I think he just squatted 275 for like four. So
Oh, did he?
I don't
I
think
didn't see that. Yeah,
yeah,
but
that's pretty
but
dope.
but
So,
Matisse,
but
has started to train recently at our gym. Uh,
mm,
he's coached by
Oh,
Coco, and
give us some more, man. You're
no,
holding out. You're holding out.
he's coached by Coco, and he's much stronger than like French nationals. When he did French nationals, he actually had his back tweaked like a week out, so he definitely
okay.
wasn't 100%. So I think if he pulls up a good day, and he's a deadlift monster. Like he can. I wouldn't be surprised if he deadlifts around 340 ish. I think
Oh wow.
so. He's actually much stronger than what his nomination um, like lets appear. So it's more so how well his back is going to be on the day, and if his back is good on the day, I think I don't know necessarily if he could win against like Enna or Kale, but I think like we said, if one of them is like let's push it, let's push it, let's push it, and then maybe misses a third pool, Matthias can definitely sneak in there.
I mean,
Well, that's going to
of
be interesting
course.
because yeah, like that you got two big deadlifters. Cali's pretty well rounded, and we're not fully aware of what he's going to be capable of. But based upon his training, like his best, I think his best squat in competition is 285, and if he's doing 275 for four, and he doesn't have to cut anymore to
Yeah.
74, it's going to be pretty interesting to see what he'll be able to do on the platform.
Yeah, I think it's probably like 83s is probably like the star of the show with the 105s and the 120s for these Euros. I think it's like you said with the 120s, it's probably a bit closer than we think, and especially
Mm.
because like some lifters are just growing fast, and Matisse is definitely one of them because like not even 2 years ago, I think he was totally 700 as an 83, and now he's like
Wow.
in the 800s. Like I think
Yeah.
his top end is definitely like 830s, 40s, around there, I
Holy
think.
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, we might have a three-way battle then, because I mean that's Enaharo. Enaharo is yet to have. I mean, he's always hunting for something real big, but I mean, I think his nominated total is 827. So yeah, that's going to be a really exciting thing, and there's probably going to be a game of chicken between
Oh,
between him and yeah, that'll be awesome.
yeah.
We'll have to tune in and see. Listen, gentlemen, I much appreciate you guys hopping on here, and we put together something for our European friends and get some European content here. I was super tied up in terms of the U.S. Nationals, but glad to be able to put something together just in the 11th hour to get it. I know Euro starts tomorrow, and then we can all reconvene and see where our predictions ended up in terms of the European Championship. And I
We got to
I
give
echo your
just a little bit
sentiments.
of love to the 120 pluses though, Ryan, so we
Go
don't
ahead.
we don't miss it.
Go ahead.
We're we're probably I mean we got Teamer who is cut down a massive
Oh,
amount and then is kind of figuring out where he's at. And he's maybe going to be improving, coming back into his. He's nominated at 990. We got the very variable lifter of Cenk Kocak, who's nominated at 997, and then AJ, who's just been making this awesome progress. He is probably going to dominate. He's nominated at 1020, but uh, we're going to hopefully see maybe more than one total in the 4-digit range, which would be pretty impressive. I don't think we've yet to see a podium at Worlds even have more than 1 or 2 thousand kilo plus totals in the 120 pluses. So it might be cool to see if someone can, keep Jesus honest. Like travel is real tough on supers, and we want to always make sure that even the obvious kind of locks in some of these first places do have to show up and like at least make attempts. So I think that'll be interesting to see what AJ can do on the day.
I hope AJ can. It, God bless. Jesus needs a rival before this is all over said and done. But there's a lot of he's gonna have a lot of growth before that. Obviously, AJ's a young guy. If not AJ,
Sure.
whomever. I agree on that, but it's that's a big ask. There's Jesus Laveras, and then there seems to be everybody else. But yeah, AJ's a phenomenal lifter. He's definitely would be my pick for the 120 pluses for sure. Again, Kocak forever with that big final deadlift. If he ever hits, my God, it'd be a huge upset. But I think this is probably AJ's to lose, in my estimation. Okay, fellas. Much appreciated. Penna, thanks for jumping on here, my dude. Super duper late notice,
My
but
pleasure.
God bless. And let us know how it goes over there, sir, as you return to the
Okay.
scene of your title win, your highly coveted title win in 2023 in Malta. All right, my friends, and for everybody listening, as per usual, please do subscribe, give us high ratings, and until next time, six pack Lapidat, six up, and we are out.